I wanted to highlight in particular, and I found that second one was like, boom. It was like mic drop. It was to paraphrase, and what I interpreted was almost like there's really no point getting attached to anything because it's constantly changing and shifting. And so, and it just is, and that's something you're constantly tuning into as a reflector. And I was like, oh, wow, what an incredibly liberating, um, piece of feedback. That's not a very eloquent way to say it, but just that was just really magical. I was like, oh my goodness, right. And I feel my 3 was really like, oh, you see, she was right. Everything's an experiment. We just don't be attached. We just play, right? And the other thing too, when you were talking about, prior to discovering your reflector, and then when you discovered your reflector, and looking back on how you were operating in terms of your business, the idea that you were doing it wrong, air quotes, right, by society standards, but really you had actually given yourself the permission already to operate whatever felt appropriate and comfortable and correct for you. And it's so interesting that in so many people's perceptions, let's say outside of human design, who would be like, well, it is wrong, right? That's not the way you do it. Here's the formula for success. Here you go. And I think that, what I love about human design is we understand we're all designed differently. We all have a different role on the planet. We're all a different puzzle piece in the cosmic puzzle, as Carrie Parker says. But most importantly, what is correct for one person is not correct for the other. And creating that freedom to experiment. And I will say, my dream is that more and more people, like everybody, really understands and taps into human design to the extent of really being able to honor everybody's differences and how we're all brilliantly unique. But when you were talking about, you're stepping into doing it wrong, which actually was perfectly correct, is I think there was an amount of bravery in there because of so much external societal pressure to be a certain way, show up a certain way, follow a certain path, do these certain steps, right, in terms of business building. And so, completely honoring you for that, and then finding out your reflector and go, ta-da, right? Like you had it right all along.
It was reassuring to see that my gates were exactly what I loved and was drawn to, and what I built my business around. That I felt like I've always been quite rebellious and cheeky, that's what I wanted. I wanted my business to serve my inquisitiveness about life, that my clients, when they came to me, were ways for me to go deeper into what I was learning, and that I would call them in so that I would grow and I would understand myself more. And I was using quite a lot of terminology that is human design as I tweaked my business so that it felt like there was a sweet spot, and I would only do my business so that it served me. And that, as you know, a personal, so I'm not transpersonal, I'm personal. And I always knew that I was running my business for me, that my clients were coming in, so I would call them in at the stage that they would be useful for me. And then it was a win-win for all of us. And that felt liberating because I wasn't here to change the world. I felt like I was here and my business was helping me to change myself, to slough off the stuff that wasn't me. And the image I always had was, as I was exploring and continually learning, was that the dross that was not the gold, the trueness of me, was being burned off in the fire of life, and I was willingly allowing myself to go deeper and closer to the fire, so that there was a reflection of life in me. So there was nothing that was not divinity, and anything that wasn't that, my experiences of life were deliberately revealing me. And I love that my business has allowed me to do that, and is continuing to do that. That I never want to retire from life or my business, because it's me. It's not a strategy. It's what it feels like in the morning. And I love nowadays that I know that at some moments in the month, I want to be Tony Robbins and have a massive business. And a couple of hours later, I couldn't be bothered to do that. I just want to sit. And to know that that's okay. And to give myself permission to be absolutely chameleon and absolutely changeable, and to be okay with however and whoever I'm showing up as. And then in turn to allow other people that same joy to be themselves fully. Yeah.
Beautiful. Awesome. Yes. And I can see how people would say, well, it's wrong to be a chameleon. You got to stick with one thing. You got to focus on one thing. You have to show up in one way. And that's not the way. That's not the genius. That's not the genius. Brilliant. Thank you, Stephanie. That was awesome. Awesome. Laura, hello.
Hello.
Yes. Would you love me to repeat the question?
Possibly, yes, actually, to keep me on track. I know I'm headed for an answer, which is about sampling. But
so I'm happy to repeat.
Or shall I just roll? Because I think I've already, because I feel I've heard some things, and maybe because I think particularly with Ash talking about conditioning, I think I'm more on I really wanted to talk about sampling.
Go for it.
That's been the big thing for me, to recognize that all this stuff, it just isn't me that comes in. And with you, sorry, I've got, actually, I don't know, I want to show a photo, and I don't see whether it will show. Oh, that's a photo of me, age 9. And I feel that is a picture of a child who's had too many samples, who's a reflector. And I feel that, I feel I was quite lucky, because I had a projector mother, and I don't think I got that conditioned, relatively speaking. So I had quite a core, but I'm left angle cross, and probably with my 6 very transpersonal. So boom, 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 boom. And that's the sample I picked in that photo is still reverberating, or some of that. It really, and a lot of my personal therapy and everything has actually been about, on reflection, when I found out I was a reflector, has been about samples. That's like, oh my God. And I think that's why we're the other way around. We don't have to work on ourselves. We have to work on recognizing, oh, it was not me. It's not me. It's not me, but I've still got responsibility for how I deal with that sample. So yeah, maybe you need to get me on a question, but that was my that was kind of where what I feel was really the big benefit of finding out I was a reflector. It was really recognizing that all this stuff, I'm a therapist, I've been supervised, I recognize how to work with people and pick out other people's stuff, but to recognize the extent to which that actually is my life, not just therapy, that all that's just happening all the time, was a relief. And it's still, it's still a responsibility, but I think you need to ask me a question now.
Absolutely. No, but I love the fact that you had the impulse to share, because there's only so much that I would know to ask. You would know to share.